Okay, Kale, will give me a heads up when you think we're ready.
It looks like we have everyone cleared from the, oh, sorry, just as I said that, there's 2 more board members, so I'll let them in and then I'll let you know when they've joined.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so it looks like we're all clear in the waiting room for right now. We've got all of the pending board members in.
Okay, thank you, Kale. Good afternoon, everyone. Just as a reminder, this meeting is recorded. And we'll begin by taking attendance of board members to ensure that we have a quorum. Lonnie Al,
Here.
Justina,
Present.
thank you. Aaron Henderson,
Here.
Kailani,
Aloha, I'm here.
thank you. Ben Naki,
Here.
thank you. Bob Peters is here. Why Ali,
Here.
thank you. Sherilyn,
Here.
Mari, Mari, you're here. Yeah, I see you.
Yes.
Thank you. Carrie,
Here.
thank you. Melody,
Aloha, I'm present.
thank you. The DHS representative, Dana Luca, will be joining us at 2. Bob Davis,
Here.
Steve Schatz, Steve Schatz. I know he's coming. Matt Shim,
Here.
thank you. All right, we have a quorum and we can proceed. I'm going to move to the first item of business. I've included it here as the, I'll make a motion to approve the November 18th, 2021 minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second, Bob.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote to approve the minutes for the November 18th, 2021 meeting as presented. Lonnie,
Approve.
Justina,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Kailani,
Aye.
Ben,
Aye.
I vote aye. Why Ali? Why Ali?
Aye.
Thank you. Sherilyn,
Aye.
Mari,
Approve.
thank you. Carrie,
Aye.
Melody,
Approve.
thank you. Okay, so the November 18th minutes have been approved as submitted. I have one announcement to make today before we get launched in the body of the agenda, and that is to announce that our Deputy Attorney General, Anne Horiuchu, is leaving her position as our advisor, as there has been some reshuffling done within the Education Division for the Attorney General's office with new responsibilities. And I want to formally thank you for all the advice and counsel you have given us the past few years. You really have helped us to navigate through the director search process in particular, which we all know is a bit challenging to do, and helping us to also set up the process for hiring the Act 46 coordinator, along with the many other Sunshine Rule regulations. I've really appreciated working with you. We want to wish you well. Mike Azuma will be taking Anne's place, and we'll ask him for a formal introduction at our next meeting when he officially takes over. So Mike, welcome informally today. Nice to have you with us. And Anne, best of wishes to you. We appreciate the relationship. Aloha.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. All right, let's move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the Kauai Early Childhood Strategic Framework Pilot. At the early part of December, HECA provided its final legislative panel. And we were asked to focus at that point on Act 46 and Act 210 and share a bit about what the progress was being made around that bill and where the focus energies were going to be. As part of that discussion, I shared with everyone the coordinator's position that we had designed. And as an outcome of that meeting, it was that it was an invitation for me to sit down with Mel Horikami, Sherry Nakamura, Representative Nadine Nakamura, to learn more about the progress of the Kauai Early Childhood Strategic Framework pilot. It was a particularly intriguing session for me to learn about the process that's been used to gather the data and the information that has been gleaned from this data gathering process, something upon which I think we can build as our coordinator position, look statewide at the responsibilities of that position. The trio offered to come and share with us their progress and where that stands, their project stands at the moment, some of the lessons learned. And I jumped at the opportunity because it felt like one that from which we would all benefit. So I'm going to turn it over to Representative Nakamura, along with Sherry Nakamura and Mel Horikami, to share with us. And after the presentation has been done, there will be an opportunity to ask questions of the threesome. And I know Representative Nakamura has to leave at 2, so we all need to talk and listen fast.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you, Bob, for setting this up. And when I first ran for office in 2016 and got into office, one of my priorities was looking at universal 3- and 4-year-old education. Because of everything we know about brain science, I felt that the state had to do more in this area. And so I met up with Sherry Nakamura, no relation, and Mel Horikami, who were willing to work with me on this initiative on Kauai. We have been looking at the data on Kauai, broken down by different districts to see how students currently are getting educated and what some of the gaps are geographically and what are some of the opportunities. In the meantime, we also, there was another group on Kauai, a community-based nonprofit called Kauai Planning and Action Alliance that brings together stakeholders to address specific issues of shared concern, and early education is one of those areas. And there was a group already set up on Kauai, and we kind of merged our processes together. And what we'd like to describe to you today, kind of the methodology that we've been using to get some good data and to talk about some of the next steps as we see it. So I'm going to hand it off to Mel and Sherry, who can walk you through kind of the process used to try to figure out a roadmap for Kauai.
I'll go first. I'm Sherry Nakamura, Director of He'e Coalition, and most of you know me as looking at the K-12 space. And I am just a support on this project. Mel is the lead. And I just want to give some context as to how we got started. Back in 2020, there was a package of bills for working families, and access to learning was one of them. And He'e, as well as the Hawaii Community Foundation and the Hawaii Executive Collaborative, did have meetings with Senate, House, and executive leadership on these bills. And then COVID happened and we got a bit distracted, but through the relationships with Senate President and of course Representative Nakamura, we embarked on a sort of pilot analysis of Kauai. And I'm going to pass it over to Mel as he will present the details. But it's been a privilege and honor to work with Representative Nakamura and the legislators on Kauai. And we hope that the information will be useful for everyone.
Okay, hi everyone. Jeff's brought up a presentation. Hopefully, I think we should be good, right, Kiopu? Can you see it?
Yep, it's gone on my end.
Okay, yeah, and as was mentioned, our pilot was really about building, testing, and refining what we call the strategic expansion framework. And data analysis, as was described by Rep. Nakamura, was just one part of creating this framework. So what we have here, I'm going to start with where we kind of ended up with our whole process. And then we're going to walk back through the process on how we got to this point. So where we're currently at is that after almost 2 years now, we really feel that this framework has provided value. So we're really trying to see if we can get a coordinator position to continue to work. And what we've learned up to this point is that we have a really, really nice portfolio of delivery options. And I think that is due to all of the work of all of the people on this call. And therefore, for us, it made sense to just build and improve and evolve it. But that would require really different kinds of coordination. And one of the things I was asked to answer that would potentially be a question is to what would be the difference in the type of coordination that we were doing and the framework and analytics. So I'll kind of address and answer that question right up front here. I think it's a really different kind of coordination in that, one, we have a new way of analyzing and using our framework. Two is we need to serve as a link. There's lots of good work going on in different organizations, whether it's DSL, Patch, EOEL. But one of the missing points is a linkage between all of the organizations, especially at the ground level. Another thing that would be different would be really the community aspect. We feel that that was really important. That came across strongly, especially with the providers themselves. So today we have a lot of interface with the providers through DHS, but that would be more from a licensing, regulatory, case management standpoint. But we really need to improve the interface to be more, robust in a way that it provides support, in a way that we have a better understanding of the centers, the sector itself. And as I mentioned, really recognize that there are community differences. And I think the most important part of this is it's really coming in with a different mindset and way of thinking. And I'll save that thought for you folks later, and I'll be able to expand on that, and we can loop back to that. So how we got to this point, way early on when we first started, when the bill first came out, Act 2543, we really started with a simple list of questions. So what was the need? How is it being served today? What are the gaps? What was in terms of the delivery process or in terms of the number of seats? And our methodology is a very, I would say, kind of a scientific approach in that we really start with creating what we call these scientific models or visual models. And that's what we call these visual frameworks that kind of guide the way we capture and analyze data. And then we worked with the Hawaii Data Collaborative to build some of this intelligence into a platform. And we use the geospatial platform, which you see here. And actually that is now being allowed to help us make decisions as we move forward. So our goal is really to frame. We're not here to solve the problems. We frame things, and then as Rep. Nakamura mentioned, we actually then loop back with the community as we did with KPAA for them to be engaged in the implementation and solving process. I'll pause here and there, and then you can interrupt and ask questions at any time. I would ask Kyopo if you can see any hands or whatever going up, just let me know.
Sure, if you're ready to pause, there is one question from a board member in the chat.
Sure.
So Carrie, I'm gonna read it and then I'll hand it over to you, Carrie. She asks, is this coordinator position different from the Act 46 coordinator the ELB is hiring? If so, is it privately funded and only working on Kauai? And then I'll hand it to Carrie in case she wants to add anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
answer the,
No, it's okay. I don't have anything to add. Thanks, Kyopo.
yeah, so to answer the question is this, it's for Kauai. At the moment, that's our focus. That is our immediate focus is on Kauai. Because what's really important that came out from this is really the community aspect. So we wanted to really focus on Kauai and use this position for that purpose first, okay? In relation to the Act 46, it's not tied to that, it's separate. And right now we're looking for private funding for that position. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Sherry and Rep Nakamura, you can add at any point in time if you want to. So if not, moving on. So one of our visual models is what we call the supply and demand cleaving framework. And I'll spend a fair amount of time of explaining this. And again, if there's any questions, you can ask me a question. So if you step back and look at this from the high level, there's two sides. One is the demand side and the opposite side is the supply side, okay? And so in order to quantify what the real need is on Kauai, the approach we took was, if you start at the left-hand side, we really needed to know what was the total demand of 3- and 4-year-olds. So as you folks all know, this is the tough part because data exists, but they exist everywhere in different pockets, and it's difficult to pull it all together. So in this case, what we did, we looked at kindergarten enrollment. We looked at kindergarten enrollment at the public schools, the charter schools, and private schools on Kauai, and used that as a surrogate. Once we got that enrollment total, we then multiplied it by 2 as a surrogate for 3- and 4-year-olds. So what we came up with is this 1751 number. By the way, this is pre-pandemic numbers. And we purposely did that to isolate it from what was occurring during the pandemic. The next step we did, and through our research and investigation, we found, actually, I should step back. When Sherry and I worked on this way initial on with Carrie and Justina, and we worked through the process, I believe it was Justina who said that, who brought to my attention this whole concept of a family context. And there's this whole write-up and whole literature that, I don't know, it was 100-something pages that she gave to me. And that was the basis for this next thing called the personal choice factor. And what that represents is really the fact that we really value family choice. And we found that there are many, many reasons that families either selected a center, a home, a public pre-K, an FCIL, and in many, many cases, their preference was to have their child at home or with a grandparent. So this PCF represents the percent of families that are choosing not to send their keiki to any one of the formal programs that we have. And you'll probably ask how we came up with this percent. We did initial research and survey talking directly with families and the providers. And then we looked to the Hawaii Data Collaborative, who then used census information to identify the various variables that most closely matched those indicators, and that's how we came up with that percent. So if we look at this, now it says that the actual demand is somewhere between 1751 and 1421. I just paused it. Does that make sense? Any questions up to this point?
There was one, Dr. Uehara had written in the chat, the surrogate number does not seem to be done with the correct calculation, but I'm gonna pass it over to Mari.
Yeah, this is Mari, not Dr. Uehara, this is Mari. So, you said total number of 3 and 4 is 1751. Am I reading it right? Or is that the total number you calculated after? Because if it was a doubled number, it should end as a even number. This is an odd number, so that caught my eyes.
Yeah, that might, that's a good question, but I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, but this is a gross estimate.
So on our approach, like I said, everything is an approximation, an extrapolation, because there's no precise data.
Yes, so the 1751 is both 3 and then 4, estimating from the kindergarten entry, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Right. So half of this number is 4-year-old and half of this number is 3
That's correct.
in that estimation calculation. Or am I reading the table wrong?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, so that's why I just wanted to ask simple question that, is that the correct way to see it? Because it should be the even number, but it's okay. It's okay.
Well, sometimes when you put it in spreadsheet, Mari, and there's rounding and decimals and whatnot, yeah, so, but it is an approximation of the
Okay,
3
thank
and
you.
4-year-olds. Yeah, you're correct. Any other questions?
That's an
So-
MIQ, Mel.
Okay. Yeah, so basically it's the concept that we have a total number and that we have a personal choice factor. So there's a range. There's a range between the two numbers is what a demand is. So if I go from the supply side, again, this was difficult to capture this information. In some cases, we had to meet with individual program providers to get numbers. And I won't go through every one. You can see it from GCCs all the way to FCILs. And we have a total supply, which I have to move my number of 1421. Actually, I made a mistake. The range on the other side is not between 1751. It's 1751 and 1447, okay? So based on those numbers, right? If you look at the seats gap range, on Kauai, our gap is anywhere between 2% and 19%. And it depends on how close we are on the personal choice factor, okay? So if I had to guess, we'd probably be somewhere in between. If I had to guess what effect the pandemic had on this, probably the pandemic probably took us to the higher end. So this is the way we've been looking at it. The next step we did, we said, okay, we need to start looking at the growth factor. So this is what it looks like pre-pandemic. So we began getting data from DBET, County of Kauai. And again, it wasn't easy because it doesn't come in a simple, straightforward way. We had to interpolate, extrapolate, and we came up with a figure that says by 2035, that range will increase between 17 to 31%. And then we did this, and then we put it into our tool. And in the tool, we can, do all of our algorithms within it. But you can see we began plotting these numbers into this diagram. And we also started placing each one of the providers on it. We started color coding the providers according to potential for expansion. We also have our own color code, whether we've interviewed them or not. And our plan is to continue to use this tool to add more and more layers of intelligence. Okay. We did the same by district, as Rep. Nakor mentioned, for all 3 House districts. And I won't go through every single one of them, but you can see here. The next thing we did, we said, okay, now we know the supply and demand, but where should we be placing the seats? And one of the main variables that we found in the case of Kauai, it was heavily influenced by commuting, not by where they lived. So we started to begin to analyze, and in fact, some of this intelligence we got straight from like Kamehameha Schools, who's on the ground, who's been part of this KPAA group. And so I took and looked at what is the best way to identify commuting? Well, where the jobs are at. So that's one way to look at it. So you can see these are the percentages by industry on Kauai. And using this, we can tell, we know where all the hotels, the accommodation, retail, and all these centers are. So then we can begin to see where the commuting paths are. Once we did that, we began to see a pattern that says people were coming into these areas. And just as supporting information, we had folks telling us that the reason we travel in from, let's say, Kilauea to bring our child into a center in Lihue is simple, because it's a longer commute and there's traffic. And we'd rather be sitting in traffic with our child as opposed to worried about being late to pick them up. Others said we'd rather have the child closer to where we work. So a lot of these, the investigation and research we did actually pointed to why this commuting factor was a high variable in our regression. Okay, so then finally, this obviously leads us to more and more questions. Like, we know the supply and demand, but are we at full capacity today? And the answer is no. So the gap could be a little higher than the initial, percentage that we showed. For whatever reason, we found that providers don't typically end up filling up to their licensed number of seats. And we asked them and they have various reasons. So I won't go through all of this, but there's more questions. And that is the reason why we feel compelled to continue this effort and to actually establish a coordinator position for it. So I'll kind of stop there for Q&A.
Thank you. I just want to, in case Representative Nakamura, if you're still there, if you wanted to say anything before you jump off. I think she might have jumped off. Okay. We did have one request from Ben Naki. He asked if you could go back to the 2035 projection slide.
Should be on it. Is it, Keopu? No, not yet.
I'm gonna let Ben, I don't know which one Ben wanted, so I just.
Yeah, it was the one right after the explanation of the need. It was like the first one. I think I saw it already. I kind of glanced over it, so I just wanted to kind of see what those projections were. I didn't hear the number. So that's all. Thank you.
It went from this, Ben, from 2 to 19% to 17 to 31%. So there is a need.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's where is the need? So as it stands right now, we have no hesitancy to start building in Lihue, Kapa'a, and Koloa, and Poipu area. That's where the demand is going to be. And in fact, Rep. Nakamura left, but with this information, she's already put into some planning for classrooms already in this new development in Lehui. So this is already helping us with the expansion planning. Yeah, so I want to reiterate one other thing. We really feel strongly that all of the delivery options are important to fulfilling the need. And we need to look at all of it in more, perhaps the coordinator role can help us to be more strategic about how we build a portfolio as a whole.
So we do have a couple of questions from board members. I'm going to read Carrie's question and then hand it to her. What are the plans to grow the workforce on Kauai?
Yeah, thanks, Kyopo. I was just wondering if it's exciting that we're growing seats and growing capacity. I'm wondering, as part of the framework, what the strategies are for growing the workforce.
Yeah, we have a unique approach to that. There is no doubt that it's the facilities, the workforce, the directors are important as well. And what we found is that really the providers are the key to building the sector. So our approach to it is, from what we can tell, they're the ones that have been finding people, developing them. So that's the approach that we're going to take. So we need to support them in their process of developing their workforce. But there's many issues to that. And part of it, and part of the focus on the centers too, is that it's hard to attract people if you don't actually have a center that they can see that they're going to work at. So I think we want to help people understand this will be built. Here's the centers, here's the physical locations. Now we need the workforce, and hopefully it'll facilitate attracting folks and then having the providers do what they do to develop them.
And then related to that, Melody, I'm going to read your question, and then I'll pass it over to you, Melody. I'm not sure if you want to add anything, but Melody asked, did you run data on workforce capacity if you increase the number of seats? And then I'll hand it to you, Melody.
We haven't developed, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mel, I'm sorry.
Do you have anything to add to the question?
No, I feel like you almost answered it with when you answered Carrie's question, but do you have additional?
Well, we only have like anecdotal data right now, so there's more work needs to be done on the data side itself. From what we can tell is that the providers are able to maintain the workforce, but in terms of growing the workforce, to your point, to match additional seats, we haven't investigated whether there's the available supply that can be trained. I know that we talked to Tony Fujimoto, who has at KCC, Kauai Community College, who has a program there. Over time, she said the interest in the program has waned. I don't know if the reason for the interest in the program waning is because of a lack of supply of people to go into the program, or because of other factors. So there's a lot more work to be done to understand that workforce side.
Thank you, Mel.
And then next in my queue is Aaron. So I'll read the question again and then hand it to Aaron. Does this coordinator position focus solely on seats, or is there consideration also for home visiting services for those not in seats, e.g. the personal choice? And then Aaron, I will hand it over to you in case you want to add anything else.
Hopefully my question is clear, but if not, let me know and I can clarify. Thank you.
It's clear. Let me answer and you can let me know if it's not, Aaron. But ironically, if you look at this chart, you see below this line where these don't have numbers, that answers your question. So for example, you see this red one that says design disconnects. We didn't know that there's a percentage of families that actually wanted, but couldn't get through the process. So then they just give up, right? So those would be what I call process fixes. That if we fix our end-to-end process, they'll come back in and they'll be somewhere up here, Aaron. But there are others that we have yet to determine the right type of service, and that's why I have this blue box. So this blue box represent what are the new bridge programs and support services that we need to get these families started on their way upwards towards a formal program. And here's an idea. So if it is that families are sending Keiki to Tutu because they live in the same household, multi-generational, right? Well, Tutu might need a break once in a while from the Keiki. So perhaps we could combine respite for the Tutu with programming for the child, which wouldn't have to be 5 days, all day, right? It would be more a program type. So those are the types of things that we would categorize as new bridge programs and services. Now, perhaps FCIL could be modified to fit that role. I'm not sure, but this is where the coordination, given the information and framing, can work with all these partners to come up with the right type of solution.
Thank you. I guess I was curious because there are some families that do, have care at home, and we still have a desire to ensure that there's some sort of school readiness, perhaps, for those age groups. So thank you. That's a great idea with that specific program. So thank you. The data tells an interesting picture.
And actually that's a good segue for me to loop back to the question I had posed earlier, a different way of thinking. So one of the differences of our coordination is we see this as a continuous process, and it's in management terms, it's called rapid prototyping, which means we continually churn through and work our way upwards as opposed to just making one humongous leap. And part of the issue is making a big bet or leap is that you don't really know if it's going to work, right? That's like we have a controversy now with our football coach. So we don't know, and I'm not saying one way or another, a good thing or bad thing, but that's the kind of thing that could happen, but you don't know. But if you work towards a very thoughtful, intentional, strategic, iterative process, you can avoid some of those things. So that's a good example of a different way of thinking.
Okay, and then next, excuse me, we have Mari. Mari, you had a question on the workforce?
Yes. I think Mr. Mel explained to some degree because you are contacting the community college. But I just wanted to make sure that the workforce is not somebody who trained for 6 weeks and then just go type of thing, or the workforce, they are trained on the work. We are looking at somebody who has the quality and then know enough about the kids. I think that's very important to have a good program. It's not just that somebody watching the kids. So that's what I mean. So that's why, if the plan is included, I think that was probably Melody's questions too. What is the qualification of these educators?
Yeah, and I would say this is, again, a different way of thinking or different mindset. We would like that, but we want to be respectful of the community and the family choice factor. And so with our iterative process, we want to work our way up to that point. We don't want to drive in a stake in the ground and say, this is absolutely what is necessary for someone to qualify as a teacher. Because we've interviewed many, many teachers that actually came up through the way you described. And when I talk to the providers, those are some of the better pre-K teachers that we have. Now, I'm not an expert in the area. I don't know how that came to be, but I gotta believe something is working right. So as in my approach, it's to find out what is working right. It's an appreciative approach. It's a problems are solving approach, but yet it's an appreciative approach. Appreciative inquiry approach is it's working right. And what are the conditions and what are the things that allowed it to work right? And we have to incorporate all of those things into our thinking as we move forward. So I guess I'm saying I'm agreeing, but I say we got to have a different kind of way of getting to that point.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off. We do have a long queue, so I want to make sure I get to everyone's questions. Next I have Justina. Go ahead, Justina.
Thanks. Just unmuted myself. So you outlined a couple of ways that you had to make choices in the data, extrapolating different pieces of it, which is understandable because that's a lot of what modeling is. I wondered how you were going to check some of the model and check some of the assumptions made in the model before it's really used as part of planning. There's been, I guess, a lot of different ways that childcare desert mapping and things have people have done that work to create different models. So just a little bit on how you are thinking about testing it, essentially, stress testing it.
Well, I think the way we stress test is, as we do more interviews, as we get more insights, it'll improve itself as we move forward. But the first step we did is we actually got the community together. KPAA convened the community. And when we met with them, the numbers, it resonated. I said, this is it. We agree with these numbers, Mel, from their experience of having been on the ground. And in fact, some of the insights, such as the commuting factor, they brought up. So it's been kind of gone through its first pass, but yet we want to continue to refine it, as you said, and that'll just occur with each iteration.
Okie dokes, and next we have Carrie. I'll read it and then hand it over to you, Carrie. This probe was only for 3s and 4s, correct? You didn't query families with infants and toddlers. And then Carrie, if you'd like to add anything, just because I know you added the question a little bit ago.
Yeah, nothing to add.
The answer is yes, just 3 and 4-year-olds.
Thank you.
Okie dokes, and next we have Ben. And Ben, you had asked, is there a plan to do a similar data analysis for other counties?
Yeah, as mentioned, we really feel that the community aspect and being tied in and with the type of analytics we do is important. So we try to stay focused on Kauai, but yes, we have gone beyond Kauai to kind of test it out. So we actually, through the support of Senator DeCoit, we did the same pilot on Molokai, Lanai, and Hana. And I can actually ask Sherry, who actually conducted some of that analytics or data gathering there, to kind of give you a summary findings or preliminary findings for those 3 areas.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. So we did the same kind of approach in interviewing the providers, and actually Kamehameha Schools has community huis in each area, and we liaised with them and gathered the data and showed the data. And as Mel had mentioned, the community, they seem to verify, the data seem to be verified with the community as they're on the ground. And the other thing that really came out was that, coordination is essential, because perhaps initially when things were being built out, there might not have been all of the information in one place. So perhaps the seat building wasn't as efficient as possible. So I just reiterated the need for a coordinator, but also having that coordinator really look at it from a community perspective, as well as looking at all of the data that's available.
And we do have interest from the legislative delegation on Maui, but we wanted to start small. That's why we started with Hana, Molokai, and Lanai to just get a feel, because we feel Maui will be a bit more complicated than Kauai. But our plan is, like I said, for the immediate time to be focused on our Kauai project.
Okie dokes. Next, I have Waialeale. I'm going to read it and then hand it to you, Waialeale. You had asked, can you share a little more about the coordinator position? Maybe that will help with understanding the difference between Kauai-based and Act 46 statewide coordinator.
I don't have anything to add, Colum. My eyes are aching, so I have to turn off my camera to give my eyes a break.
Yeah, you know, I looked at the job description for the Act 46 coordinator. And when you look at the functions at face value, they're very similar. But if I would say what would be the difference is really the community-based approach. And the fact that being close to the community lends to better data gathering, being closer to the community lends to data and framework as part of the coordination as opposed to some separate step. So I would say in a simple way that would be the major difference, is a community-based approach.
Hello.
Keopu, we need to go through the rest of the queue quickly because the agenda is still pretty full.
Yes,
So-
I think the
Answer
only
these
thing I had, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, just answer the remaining questions. If anybody else has them, you can send them to us and we can pass them on to Mel and his team and ask them to get back to us.
Okie dokes. We're actually at the end of the queue. I'm just going to read one comment from Carrie, and that's the very last of it. So she had said, we'll have the county level data for Hawaii and Maui counties by July through the community profiles, and for Honolulu by the end of the year. Kauai will also be doing a community profile in the second half of 2022 that will have other indicators in addition to the 3- and 4-year-old data you see here. And that's the end of it, Bob.
Thank you. Mel, is there anything that you want to add to just kind of wrap up, you and Sherry, before we close out this session, this portion?
No, I just want to thank, well, Rep Nakamura is gone, but for helping be the lead and support behind this effort on Kauai, and for Sherry's assistance. And then for you all allowing us to have time here today. And we appreciate the questions, the thoughtful way, you know, I can tell that, you know, it's well thought out, and appreciate the questions and the time.
Well, we want to, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for all three of you for joining us this afternoon and sharing this project, being open to the questions that are being proffered, and for us to continue this conversation as we look forward to learn how the coordinator for the ELB can collaborate with the work that you folks have been doing as this person works statewide to bring together the efforts to implement Act 46 and Act 210. So thank you all for the work that you've done and for being willing to share it with us today. I'm sure we will invite you back to learn more. And as people generate more questions, we can pursue them. Appreciate your time, your information, and the work you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll be glad to be back anytime. Thanks, Bob.
Aloha. Thank you. Now let's move to item 3 on the agenda, which is the updates from the Executive Office on Early Learning. I'll turn it over to Colleen and her team.
Thank you, Bob. In the interest of time, I think maybe I'd like to ask Jordana to go first, and then Alohi. And then if there's enough time, then I'll share the updates, other office updates. But I think those two seem to be more of the priority at the moment, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Jordana?
Sure. Thank you. Okay, so I just have quite a few, but I'll quickly go through some legislative updates. They are on the document that was sent out. If anyone needs a recap or wants to read it in a bit more detail. So as approved by ELB in a few months ago, EOEL had requested an appropriation ceiling of $100,000 for the Early Childhood Educator Stipend Program, the special fund. And that appropriation ceiling would allow us to be able to expend funds that would get dropped into the special funds. So currently there are no appropriations. So this request would allow us to be able to expend funds that are dropped into the special fund. We also had requested 2 full-time equivalent position counts. One was for a fiscal specialist and another for a contract specialist, with the intention to expand our internal capacity to focus on budgetary and fiscal responsibilities, as well as contracts and procurement, especially when we start to expand programs and services. The appropriation ceiling was approved by the governor. However, the 2 FT position counts were not. So the 2 FT position counts are not included in the budget that was sent to the legislature by the governor. Legislative informational briefings have begun. So the start of the leg session is next week, Wednesday, but in this week, last week, and in the next few weeks, we'll be having informational briefings. So this morning was EOEL's first briefing. It was a joint briefing with the Senate Committee on Ways and Means and Education at 9:30. The focus of this was the budget and budgetary requests as it relates to EOEL. And then tomorrow, the House Committee on Finance briefing at 1:30. And then on January 20th, we have a House Committee on Education informational briefings. So tomorrow's will focus again on the budget and budgetary requests. The informational briefing on the 20th will be more about EOEL and any expansion plans and COVID related issues that have cropped up. The legislative, okay, so I do want to quickly also go over the process for this legislative session. It's essentially going to be the same process we used last year. So the bill introduction deadline is, I believe, January 26th. So once that deadline happens, EOEL will be reviewing all bills that have been introduced to the ledge, and will extrapolate ones that relate directly to EOEL and ELB, as well as other bills that may pertain to the field at large or that relate to our statutory responsibilities. And then we will share updates with ELB on and if whether those bills progress, if there's any important hearings, any really important pertinent information about these bills to help ELB make decisions around them. And then we will also continue to work with and collaborate with other state departments. So as necessary, so some bills may include different departments or multiple departments, and we'll continue to work closely with other departments to kind of understand the bills a little bit better, understand their perspective, and as a way for us to incorporate testimony as needed in a collaborative manner. So we'll continue that through this ledge session as well. Yeah, and then we'll be keeping ELB abreast of any important bills related to the field at large. Any questions?
I would just add that just for people who are new to the board, that we also collaborate on testimony, although it's not always identical. We generally are looking to support similar issues, and that will be part of the conversation that we bring back to the board as well. Any other questions for Jordana? All right, then let's move on to, I guess, Alohi, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year's. I wanted to take this time to share a little bit about our early childhood website. earlychildhoodhawaii.com. So EOEL has previously announced an impending launch of additional pages to earlychildhoodhawaii.com pertaining to the workforce related content, and are really geared towards those who are entering and currently working in the early childhood education field. We recognize that there's workforce projects in the pipeline that would significantly add value to what our web pages may offer and what we can create. We really want to create more robust page, and additional time is required to explore these opportunities and to develop pages that are more effective and for our intended audience. This will allow us to coordinate with our partners and build more source material to create the type of content needed, such as, so the launch of the additional workforce pages on the website will be on hold for now. And we want to share our appreciation for the time that our invited partners have taken to review our test pages and provide feedback. That's it for me at this time. Thank you.
Alohi, does anyone have any questions for Alohi? Okay, none. I'll go on to office updates then. Things that we didn't get to include on the updates that went out earlier. We have plans, we've initiated plans for early literacy, a state early literacy plan. If you recall, a while ago, the state literacy plan was shared with ELB. And as that is an aspirational plan that shines light on literacy across all age groups. It provides a critical foundation for our state. And so the early childhood education being a specialized area, we wanted to initiate the plan that would focus on the early childhood years. So we've initiated conversations with DOE, Head Start, Collab Office, P20, and UH as well, in order to begin a collaborative development of this state early literacy plan or state early childhood plan. Literacy plan, we don't have a specific name for it at the time. So I just want to let ELB know about that. To clarify, this is not a plan grounded in any specific program. The focus here is on the pedagogy and science of learning and development for children, specifically those related to literacy. Second thing that's happening is we've wanted to build off of, in the past, EOL has always done a summer institute with UH. We're building off of that in efforts to expand opportunities for professional learning across sectors, which is what the Summer Institute has done. And so we're establishing an Early Childhood Professional Learning Institute with UH. That is, again, an outgrowth of the Summer Institute. The focus here is pedagogical leadership. And as we develop more details around this, I'll update ELB. We also wanted to let you know that we've put out a request for information for family-child interaction learning programs. As you know, we had wanted to reestablish those programs again. So I just want to let everyone know that the RFI has gone out, and it's requesting information from the public to provide us information as we develop the request for proposal. I believe it is, and Kelly Houston, I know you're here, if you could confirm what I'm saying. I believe this is going out, or it will go out today. It's posted today, and the due date is January 28th. Kelly, can you confirm that for me?
I'm not quite sure. I know it's with the procurement branch of the DOE, so I'm not quite sure when the release date is. And you may know more about that than I do at this point. So can't confirm the exact date, but it is in the works and should be released imminently.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So I will, thank you. I will keep people, I'll let the board know for sure what those are, but you might want to be on the lookout for a request for information. In terms of the early childhood stipend program, we have submitted our grant request to the Samuel and Mary Castle Foundation. We'll await to hear their reply, and then the development of a memorandum of agreement with UH is in process. And then as far as pre-K expansion goes, the EOL public pre-K expansion, in the light of Act 46, and because the biennium for our purposes within the office is coming up soon, we needed to begin looking at how we're going to address our statutory responsibilities there too. So we have initiated conversations with the DOE, and internally are working on the application for the schools, and we'll be reaching out to schools to determine interest, and at some point gather more information and bring that information back to the board. And this is really for the next biennium, so that we can get your approval or recommendations around what that might look like moving forward and what our ask might be in the next biennium. Again, this is not for this legislative session. This is for 2023. It's just that we had to get started on that process in order to meet the deadlines for the biennium. So that's it for what I have, and glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Colleen or other members of the office?
So there was one question from Carrie from earlier. Is anyone authoring a bill or amending 210 to include a budget ask for Act 46? And then I'll hand it to Carrie in case you want to add anything else.
I am not
Sure.
familiar with anything. Jordana, I don't know if you want to respond to that as well. I'm sorry, was it the question to us specifically or to everyone? I'm sorry if I answered.
Yeah, sorry,
What I
Colleen,
should
I
have.
put you on the spot when it was actually a question after the policy. So sorry.
Okay, got it. Okay, no problem.
So Carrie, you were asking everybody who's sitting here on the board. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
So nothing from EOEL.
Mhm.
Is there anything from DHS? I mean, is anybody or any of the legislators amending to request state funds for Act 46?
We inquired of the education folks, but we hadn't heard anything that was being shifted or changed from them initially. So I don't know at this point if there's any change. Dana, is there anything from DHS that you're aware of?
Hi, no, I'm not aware of anything from DHS.
Okay. I think we'll learn from.
Wait, Ali.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, I sort of riffing off of Carrie's question. I mean, can we, as a board, is that something we can do as a board, or maybe it's too late because it's not agendized? I just feel like maybe we need to be a little bit more active around asking for those dollars somehow.
Well, I think the basic place we're asking for dollars is the stipend money. That I do think that Representative Woodson did tell us he was planning to incorporate into the bill. That would probably be a primary place. I think there will be some opportunities when Terry shares her report with us shortly. There may be some other bill opportunities for us to support workforce capacity at that point. But Terry, I want to hold off on that till that opportunity comes up. Why, Ali, if you had some specific suggestions for the board to consider, we certainly can consider them.
I don't right now, Bob, but I do know that every piece of it has not really been funded, and so I'm just not sure if it's something we should be looking at to figure out how and where they might be, if not in a single Act 210 bill,
in places that are critical to get the funding that's necessary.
You know, I just wonder if we have the background data to support asks. That would be my question at this point. What would we be asking for and have an identified need to meet other than the very global expansion? At this point, I'm not sure what that would be. Were we to already have a statewide coordinator in position, we might be in a place to be able to do that, but I don't have a sense of what that might be. So if others have specific suggestions, certainly bring them back to me. We can bring it to the board. In terms of the time frame, I don't know that we could get a bill out in time unless the board had fully approved of it. And that would be a little bit difficult given the time frame. Now, I think there's no doubt that we would be looking toward a request in the next biennium. Absolutely. That would be a real key. That's
one more comment, and I wonder if Terry, you also said in the chat that you had some data already at the county levels that might be useful. I guess, you know, I think I don't know what the bills are going to look like this session, but I don't want to give up so easily and say 2023. I mean, if there are bills that are in the pipeline, which I really don't know if there are, that there might be opportunities to add some information there or funding opportunities there.
Yeah, as the only ones I know about are the potential workforce capacity building, which Terry will tell us a little bit more about. Beyond that, I'm not aware of other bills. I don't know if anyone else is.
Yeah, I just had a question for Bob Davis. If the department's putting in a request for the kindergarten entry assessments as part of Act 46?
I'm not aware. I think that got extended, but I'm not aware if anything's going in this year.
Yeah, and Bob, I think it just begs the question, you know, Act 46 is kind of this in-between grout bill that impacts multiple agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if we are going to do a request to fund Act 46, who does it come from? Who do we work in partnership with to develop that? I'm assuming Rep. Woodson at this point. But I think that we need a strategy around that.
And what would you suggest that be?
I don't know that yet. But I don't know if it comes from ELB. I don't know if it comes from EOEL, who then works with the key partners, because we will have an Act 46 coordinator. I'm not sure, but I do think that that should be prioritized this year.
Well, I think we have it prioritized in our priorities of something we want to work toward. Maybe I'm not thinking as that clearly, but if we're really going to stand up this coordinator's position and get it going, I would hope we would be in a position to have the information we need about where the possibilities are, you know, and what are some of the steps. That would be the outcome. And there is nothing that says we can't support bills that somebody else might provide. My sense of the KEA question was that there was not a need for additional funding at this point on the part of the DOE from some conversations at the end of last year. I don't know how accurate that remains, but that was my sense of it. So I don't think we'll lose it from the priorities we have to work on. But I don't know that we have anything right now that we can say, this is what we can and need to go forward on until we have a better sense of what that might be. Why, Ali, I don't mean to dismiss your suggestion in any sense. I just don't know where it's taking us at the moment until we figure out what those priorities might be that we can act on. Any other comment that people want to make or questions? All right. So let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the subcommittee reports. And we'll resume a little bit of this discussion when we get to the workforce equity update. And maybe that'll give us help to give us some direction for this year beyond the stipend support that we wish to see happen. The first subcommittee report is from the Director's Search Subcommittee. And Steve, I'll ask you to share an update with us on that subcommittee's work.
Sure. Thanks, Bob, and hi, everyone. As you all know, we sort of re-established the subcommittee. I'm the chair of the subcommittee, and I'm happy to report that we do have qualified candidates and we are moving forward with the process. That's probably literally all I'm going to share, because you know that we're trying to keep this process very confidential. But the good news is that there are qualified candidates and we are moving forward as a subcommittee with those candidates.
Any questions for Steve? Not that he's guaranteeing he'll answer.
Yeah.
Steve, I just have a quick process question. What are the next steps? Like, does the committee determine who would go forward then to the board, or what's the next steps?
Yes, just what you just said. Yeah. So we're the, it's actually, it's really a reestablishment of the existing process in terms of who vets what. Just the timing is a little different in that the new version of it allows for some flexibility. And like the other one had specific dates by which each point in time or each part of the process would take place, whereas now we're keeping that a little more fluid.
Yeah, I think it's important to add too, Carrie, just so everybody recalls that the advisory group is functioning again. So it's giving input, although not bringing forward anything, but giving input too about those candidates. Steve, I hope didn't mind me sharing.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay. Any other questions for Steve or observations? Okay, thanks, Steve, and thanks for the committee's continued work in moving us in the direction of selecting a new director. The systems mapping subcommittee has a brief update today, and we'll probably have a more detailed one next month, I believe. So Carrie, I'm going to put it in your direction. I don't know if you are the one reporting for the committee or if all of you are.
Sure. So we just have a brief update. This is complicated. I'm just going to say that. I think the committee is confident in continuing to work with AUW, 211 and Keiki Central, and DHS, who will be creating the consumer education website and using what's already existing for the mapping instead of starting something from scratch. So that's great. We still have to meet with DHS to find out their timeline, the mapping capabilities and functionalities, and how they're going to be building that out. We did have a really good meeting with AUW and got a better understanding of what their interface is going to look like. They're revamping their entire 2-in-1 interface. We will still be able to access the data on the back end, their intake process for getting all of the information from organizations across the state, and their text and call functionalities, right? And so being able to leverage their staff, which is really great. What we won't be able to leverage, they will not be building a separate map for early childhood or for young children. And so we will have to fund that, and it will have to be housed somewhere. And Keiki Central, there's some structure there, but we really need an entity to say, we'll pick this up and we will work closely with AUW 2-in-1 to keep it updated and monitored and all of that. And so the committee this month is going to have to make a decision on what the recommendation is for that going forward. And then that entity will be taking the lead and working with AUW 2-in-1. So that's kind of where we are. And we have had, and that will require funding. We've had a funder step forward to offer some funds and then another funder step forward to match. So that's great. We just need to figure out the home and the next steps for the specific early childhood mapping component.
Thank you, and thanks to the committee, because you guys have been doing an awful lot of work of connecting and setting this up so that we can figure out where we want to go with this. Much appreciated. Look forward to hearing more at the next meeting. All right, we're going to move now to the Workforce Equity Subcommittee update. Justina and Terry, I will turn it over to you.
Great. I'll kick us off and then I'll mostly be turning it over to Terry. So just to give kind of a broad brush update of where we're at, the Workforce Equity Subcommittee regrouped in early 2020, probably like many other committees. And I did just want to remind this group that the subcommittee exists basically to collaborate on supporting the early learning workforce efforts. That includes things like retention and recruitment, which we know are really key right now, and also more systemic pieces that can help strengthen the system that involves our workforce. The committee members are myself and Terry Locke, also Kelly Houston, Bob Peters, although he might not say he's an official member, Melody Vega, and also Kathleen Algier from HCAN. So today's information is going to be presented in basically two pieces that we want to share with you by Terry. One is a bit of an update on the Educator Equity and Excellence Project housed at the center at UH Manoa with Terry Locke's leadership. And she'll be sharing a little bit more about the now active project looking at the compensation study. And then the second part is Terry will also share a little bit about the 2022 legislative session as it relates to workforce development and support. So as we're listening to Terry, I think there's a couple of ways that we're actually envisioning the early learning board members can participate, or the organizations that you're involved with, particularly around the compensation study. So Terry will elaborate, but if you, as you're listening to Terry, kind of keep those pieces in mind. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry. Thanks for being with us.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you, Justina. Thank you, Bob. Okay, I have some slides for all of us. Okay, let me get to them. Yeah, so as Justina mentioned, this is a workforce equity update for our board. And I will just say, kind of reiterate what Justina mentioned, that during this time, I'm going to be talking a little bit, giving you some context about, before I get into the early childhood educator compensation equity study, but also your participation in it, as well as towards the end of my presentation, we'll be talking about some workforce bills that I am working with HCAN on, and would like to really, well, and through HECIA. So want to bring those to your attention. So first of all, want to just ground ourselves in this vision. All children beginning at birth and their families have a right to high quality, accessible early care and learning programs, staffed with well-prepared, well-supported, well-compensated early childhood educators. And this comes from the Center on the Study of Childcare Employment at Berkeley, University of Berkeley, California. This is their annual, or they send out a report called the Early Childhood Workforce Index every 2 years. This is the latest one in 2020. Early educators are engaged in incredibly difficult and complex work that has been recognized as essential to children's learning and development, supportive for families, and foundational to the economy. In the best of times, educators do this work in conditions that undermine their well-being, and the COVID-19 pandemic has only deepened the harm caused to this workforce, nearly all of whom are women. And so that brings me to look at, also from the Center of Childcare Employment, some way of thinking about policy framework for good ECE jobs. So as you can see here, the policies that surround good jobs really include these things: workforce data, financial resources, work environments, qualifications and educational supports, and compensation and financial relief. And in particular, the Center on the Study of Childcare Employment began to look at the workforce policies in the childcare space, which is different than what is going on in the K-12 space. And so looking at what makes good jobs. What are those? So in Hawaii, looking at the policy areas and where we're progressing or not, is we are edging forward in qualifications. And that's great. We don't have any data on workforce environments. We are stalled, have not made progress on compensation. Financial resources have also been stalled on workforce data. So that's important because if we want to move forward on good jobs, we have to consider all of these areas. But we're not alone. So many states are in that place too. So you can see, the blue or aqua is making headway, the orange or yellow is edging forward, stalled is red, not applicable is white, and not available is gray. So as you can see, qualifications in 38 states have been, edging forward. So that's great. However, when you look at compensation, you can see that there's only 9 states that are moving forward, but 42 states are stalled, and we're one of those. And I'm also, when I looked at that, what also stood out for me was the well-being of our workforce. And of course, that quote I just read especially covers sort of the way the workforce feels. So the health and well-being, as you can see, 38 states, that's also stalled, and that's going back to where we are. We also don't have any actual data on work environments. Okay, so thinking about that, I want to then share with you about through the Early Childhood Educator Excellence and Equity Project, we have funded this Early Childhood Educator Compensation Equity Study. Okay, but before I get there, I just want to emphasize that public investment and state policies are necessary to prepare and support and compensate our workforce. Okay, so this is just a front description or title of our compensation study. I want to especially, this has been funded by the Early Educator Investment Collaborative, as well as Samuel and Mary Castle Foundation, Kamehameha Schools, and Hawaii Community Foundation, Ko'ani Ani Fund. 3 of the project team, so Rand Corporation has been selected as the contractor to do our work. The team that we're specifically working with are Dr. Lynn Carrolley, who's a senior economist with RAND, and she also had been on the panel for the Transforming the Financing of Early Childhood Education report. Dr. Jill Cannon, senior policy researcher, and Dr. Celia Gomez, policy researcher. Lynn lives on the East Coast, and Jill and Celia on the West Coast. And so they have worked in a number of states together, and I think we have a really awesome team. Okay, so I want to just describe the study a little bit and kind of where you all could get involved. So the whole premise of the study or goal of the study is to increase really our understanding about high quality early care and education requires a diverse, well-prepared, supported, and compensated workforce. We're particularly looking at compensation and how do we get there to increase compensation. So the first thing will be, the first objective is to really assemble some really relevant data for us. And it's looking at, first of all, the size and characteristics of the ECE workforce, including wages, benefits, and working conditions. The challenges facing underrepresented and underserved prospective and college students in the early childhood field or wanting to go into the early childhood field. And then initiatives in our state, as well as other places, that look at promising practices for attracting, compensating, and retaining qualified early childhood educators. So this is going to be done through a variety of data collection efforts, including a survey, informant interviews, key focus groups, key informant interviews, and also focus groups. Okay, so we'll later, as that gets rolled out, I'll certainly be letting you know when that happens, and certainly would like your involvement in that. The second half, after getting the data, we want to build a strategic roadmap and financing strategy to advance the increase of compensation and improve working conditions for qualified early educators. And it's some of the ideas will come from the team, in particular, Dr. Carol Lee, because of her work as an economist. And so there'll be an opportunity to bring stakeholders together in a workshop type format where we would look at a variety of different strategies and begin to see what strategies will be short-term, maybe more intermediate, and then long-term strategies. One of the long-term goals is to get to pay parity for those educators who have similar qualifications. So that'll be the development of the roadmap. And finally, there'll be a final report that will be given out to me, and I'll be sharing with all of you, because we want to really see that what we gain from this study and into this final report will be used as we move forward, in particular for the 2023 legislative session and beyond. Okay, any questions about the study itself that maybe I can answer? Okay. And Kyopo, if there's questions that come up, just let me know. What I'd like to go into now, and I'm not sure whether Kathleen Algeier is on in this call or not, but I want to let you know about these workforce bills that are being introduced this session. Kathleen has been working with several legislators, and I've been in touch with at least one of the legislators. So the first bill is really to look at improving our early childhood workforce registry. One of the things that is really been actually holding us back is ongoing relevant workforce information. And many of you know that the last time we really did a whole workforce study was in 2024, or it came out in 2024. I'm sorry, 2004. And so it's been a while. And of course, the study I just described is not the whole workforce study, but it really is compensation. But there are many states that really have improved their workforce register data, and able to look at data on an ongoing basis and have reports, more annually than once in, so many years. So we're looking at how do we improve the early childhood workforce registry. We like to really see that all staff who are in licensed and registered programs to provide information on demographic data, compensation and benefits, and professional development on an annual basis. And then this bill also appropriates funds to DHS to make upgrades in the registry. I also want to let you know that many states have different configurations of where the registry lies. We have it in DHS. There are a number of states that really have it outside of state agencies, which makes it somewhat more nimble for data to be collected and for reports to be given. I just know that DHS has been wonderful about collecting some data, but I know they're also dealing with difficulties in sometimes getting the data out. And I think they are dealing with, I can't speak for DHS or Dana, Luca, but I understand it's an older system. Okay, and then the second bill is retention and recruitment of workforce. One of the goals, or one of the things we know, is that in compensation or increasing wages, benefits, and working conditions really help to recruit and retain early childhood workforce. This bill is will be a pilot project that would be a pilot compensation project. And it would be a way to increase wages and kind of test out some models about what will help to not just recruit workforce, but also retain workforce. This also appropriates $1 million to the Early Childhood Stipend Fund. Okay. This third bill, and the final bill I'm going to talk about, is one that it's to create a dedicated revenue for early care and learning and support of programs. So one of the things that is important for us to really consider for our entire system to be supported is we actually need some dedicated financing or dedicated funding stream. And this is something we've talked about for many years, thinking about various ways of doing that. This one is to increase conveyance tax on sales of properties valued at over $1 million. Tax would be collected in an early learning special fund, and the special fund would be used to support programs in early learning. In addition, this bill appropriates $15 million for preschool open doors and creates appropriation for early childhood apprenticeship programs that are federally recognized, community-based, which also includes pre-apprenticeship. And just want to say that we are testing out apprenticeship program through the project that I'm leading through the university. So that is all to the bills. I want to end with this quote, and I can answer questions. Investing in the early childhood workforce is an investment in our children. Investment in our children is an investment in our future. Okay, any questions or comments?
Terry, do you want to just reiterate any timing that there might be for people either on the, because you know it better with the study and how they're reaching out, and then also on the roadmap piece?
Yes. So the actual data collection with surveys, focus groups, and key informant interviews will probably happen, I would say, between February to April. And then the roadmap with stakeholders will be getting together in May. And then again, the final report will be done by end of July.
Terry, we know that the Early Learning Board is going to be asked to review the results and
Yes.
report and give feedback. Are there other roles between now and the time that report is ready that you would like the Early Learning Board to play in the study itself?
Yeah, so I think so there'll be opportunities, especially for direct service providers, to participate in the actual survey, focus groups, and key informant interviews. For those of us who are not directly providing services, but are part of the community, some of you will be asked to participate as key stakeholders in the development of the roadmap. So that's what my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And I had a question about the three bills. They're all in draft form at this point, I know.
Yeah.
Are you anticipating that all three will be submitted for committee review?
Yeah, so my understanding is that there's a definite interest in all three of them. There's a lot of interest in the workforce registry bill. So I'm not sure who's, right now I know one office has been asked to work with several other offices or legislators. One legislator has been asked to work with other legislators who are interested in moving it along. And Kathleen's really trying to facilitate that process.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions for Terry or Justina?
What was that, Bob?
I was just saying, are there any other comments or questions for you or Justina?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, I see Deb is here. Deb, do you have anything to, no, okay.
Kathleen's on as well, just if there's questions.
Yeah, but I do want to tell, I want to thank HCAN and Hekia, is that I think what happened to some of you might have been involved with the legislative training series that went on in October, November, and December. And that helped to spur some, not as many legislators participated as we would have liked, but that did spur on some real strong interest in our early care and education system, including workforce. So that was wonderful. We'll do that, and we'll probably do that again earlier in the year than later in the year.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and it's exciting to see that the survey and the grant investment in this particular investigation is moving forward, and appreciate the work of the Workforce Equity Subcommittee for supporting the efforts of what's happening. And we now have 3 possible bills for us to consider and look at as we move forward with regard to the role we might take, assuming they are all 3 introduced and come before committees for testimony. So thank you for sharing that tonight around the workforce capacity. The final subcommittee report is from the Capacity and Resources Subcommittee. And Sherilyn and Aaron, I'm going to turn it to the 2 of you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, so I can't believe it, but it's been a year since the subcommittee did a recommendation for estate plan annual reporting. And I was really surprised to see that it was last January. There were 2 objectives that we had recommended and was accepted by the board. Objective 1 was to do annual reporting on achievements and lessons learned. And the recommendation was that there was the development of the web-based data dashboard, which was talked about a little bit earlier during Colleen's update. And objective 2 was to have a place of discussion with the board for challenges and emerging opportunities, setting annual milestones within the 5-year priorities for collective action. And today, Alohi will be joining us to provide some of that data and open up for discussion. I'm just going to quickly read what we had hoped for to have the report cover, which would be the 3 points were to summarize and highlight data points and share lessons learned, provide the board with periodic opportunities to review, reflect, recommend course corrections when needed, and set annual milestones, and that the reporting be appropriately timed to update ELB at least twice per year, consider budgetary and other policy priorities for the next legislative session, as well as any other external timelines of public agencies that influence decision-making when data is available. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Alohi for her presentation.
Thank you, Sheridan, and thank you to the subcommittee also for allowing me to have the time to share this information with you all. I do want to take a moment to share my screen properly and go into presentation mode. Okay. So today I wanted to take some time to give a progress update to the Early Learning Board regarding the Early Childhood State Plan. This is the first of its kind of this kind of presentation, and we will, according to the memo that Sherilyn and the information Sherilyn shared, we want to do this twice a year. So if there is overall feedback on this process or the kind of information you would like to be shared in this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me so that we can shape this for the maybe the middle of the year or for the next presentation upcoming. Okay, there we go. So for today, I just wanted to give an overview of and kind of set context to remind us of where our state plan lies, champion and partner roles, and share a little bit of the timeline that we have gone through so far. I want to go over the phased approach to re-engagement, which was the process that Champions gone through after the COVID pandemic started to get reacquainted with the plan. And then the more meaty part of our presentation, which is going over the overall progress of our early childhood state plan, and then looking at progress by each of the strategic implementation plans, which I'll be using probably SIP or referring to as SIP. We are going to be looking at progress through achievements, lessons learned, emerging priorities, unanticipated challenges, and resource needed. I sent an attachment that outlines all of this information under these kinds of categories, but for today, I'm just going to highlight more practical items under achievement and lessons learned and resources needed in order to, or I mean, anticipated challenges and resources needed in order to kind of share more practical ways that champions are making progress in the SIPs as they're working towards actions and objectives. Make sure my timer is okay. So we do have one early childhood state plan. Under that early childhood state plan, we have 7 strategic implementation plans to move only parts of the plan forward. It does not cover our whole early childhood state plan. Within each of the strategic implementation plans, we have 19 objectives and 43 champions that have agreed to move those objectives forward, and the many, many more champion partners and stakeholders that support the state plan and the SIPs in a variety of ways. For a review of the kinds of roles that we find within our state plan and SIPs, we have champions, which are really meant to lend their leadership and ensure that an objective moves forward. They're not expected to do all the work themselves, and it's really through their leadership with their partners and collaboration that there's engagement and implementation of these strategic plans. The partners I refer to connect to the plan in a variety of ways, and they can be seen as organizations, individuals, key stakeholders, and they come from different parts of the sector, other sectors. And so they may be implementing a single action or sub-action of the plan or acting as content area expert, providing information or resources in some way. I see these as objective teams across all of these 7 plans, and each of the objective teams develop their own shared roles, expectations, and they agree on their own game plan. I want to emphasize again that we have been, throughout the whole process, these plans are, the SIPs and all related documents are considered living. And so that allows for the flexibility of our champions and partners and EOL to adapt to our changing environment as we go along. Just for a quick review of how each of the strategic implementation plans are connected to each of the 5 building blocks within our state plan. Like I said before, the strategic implementation plans don't move our whole state plan forward, but only parts, but we had to start somewhere. And so just review, we have access to more resources for children and families, availability for more seats for children and families, early childhood health and family well-being, family knowledge and engagement in child development, quality workforce supports and development, transition supports, and the last one, early childhood integrated data system. I do want to note that that last one with the asterisks was not a true strategic implementation plan that was developed through the process like the other plans. It except is something a bit of a pre-plan that emerged with suggested actions that can be used for ELB and EOEL and its partners to use as a foundation to truly develop a strategic implementation plan for the early childhood integrated data system. As we're looking at the list of plans, I do want to share for today, I will be sharing information about access to more resources, availability of more seats, health of family, and quality of workforce and transition supports. I won't have information for family knowledge and engagement and the early childhood integrated data system. And I'll share some reasons why, besides just the early childhood integrated data system is not developed yet. So this brings us in our timeline of what we have done so far. And as much of the work has started before 2018, that is when our state plan was developed. We were then awarded our PDG B5 grant to create the strategic implementation plans and other resources. While implementing the grant, the COVID pandemic did happen. And so we did spend 2021 re-engaging with the early childhood champions and using our website as communication tools. And we'll be entering into a phase of more of really implementation, monitoring, and engagement. At the end of our timeline for the state plan, it really does look like a process of reflection and how do we renew our state plan after the 5-year cycle. So here is the process for how champions went through re-engagement with the plan when the pandemic happened. EOEL and many of the champions and partners knew that this was a huge shift in society and in our economy. And so how do we reacquaint ourselves with the plan and reacquaint ourselves with ourselves and with our landscape and go through a process so that we can kickstart implementation. So the phases are to assess supports of the champions that were needed, re-engage with those partners, initiate actions that can be done, and then share the good news. I do want to note that this is a really good cycle to kind of go through over the next 2 years with to recycle with champions, as any kind of strategic planning process and implementation has to do these kinds of steps as they go through their plan. And so as champions initiate their actions and share their good news and go on to another one, I can see themselves kind of recycling through this process. Another thing I want to note on this slide is the 4 plans that have been taken through the re-engagement process and completed the 4 phase. And I don't have information today I'll be sharing for maximizing family engagement because they're still in the phase 2 of the re-engagement and will be needed to be taken through the process. The access to more resources also is more completed and have gone through the process. And so they're in phase 3. However, I have information that I can share about that plan today. So overall, I wanted to just take a good look at our overall, how has achievements, resources needed, and anticipated challenges cut across all the plans. And I just want to highlight that we've had many achievements, and of course, there's so many kinds of resources that are needed and unanticipated challenges, but these are just some of the main highlights that I want to share that I thought would be important for ELB and share how the work practically, examples of how the work is practically going. So for achievements, I do want to say for sure the early childhood state plan has been kept in the forefront of many kinds of conversations through the pandemic and with our re-engagement process. We have completed the re-engagement with 5 out of the 6 plans that we do have. We also completed a program evaluation plan and logic models and gathered feedback, and they were reviewed by champions. I also like to think that achievement is keeping that flexibility for our various champions so that they can continue to be a part of the work and feel a part of the work. I do want to highlight that across the plan, resources, the kinds of resources needed that champions feel are highly necessary is staff time, financial resources to implement different action items, and more information about each other as stakeholders and champions as we continue to learn about our partners and our landscape. Other things to bring to light that were thought were also needed were, of course, more subject matter expertise and facilitation training or convening help. Sorry about that. Some anticipated challenges, of course, through the pandemic is a big challenge in itself. However, the early childhood state plan has, of course, kept in the forefront and kind of showed that it's more important than maybe before or as important. And even though our capacity to engage has decreased, people have still kept the plan within their purview and their different strategic implementation plans within their purviews. The capacity to collect and share and analyze data continues to be a challenge across all the plans in many of context areas. And I think we have many practical examples that we can think of in our day-to-day work. On this slide, I want to share, you'll see a bunch of pie graphs just to kind of give us a visual of where actions are at as seen by champions. And so I want to give a minute for you guys to take some time to review this slide. But the green is actions that are completed. The dark blue is actions that are seen as still a priority after being reviewed through the re-engagement process and continue to be worked on. The light blue are the amount of actions that are on pause or resumed due to the pandemic, or maybe at unknown status because we just need to get more connected with other partners, or there may be new partners and champions that need to come about. Give a few more seconds, because I'm also a visual learner and I like this slide myself. Okay, this is the part where I want to go and share a little bit of highlights of each of the plans. So I'll be sharing about 4 of the 6 plans. And for availability of seats, which is one of our first plans, just checking the time. Some of those, of course, have been many achievements across all the plans and many unanticipated challenges. However, these are just some of the key highlights that I thought were nice to share. They have made great strides in creating supportive partnerships and for each of the objectives, and have increased understanding of the existing landscape when it comes to the availability of seats. Some anticipated challenges is that more learning does need to be done about their priority populations and rural areas, and they have found that they really want to continue learning and hear from the community themselves as they have unique needs. Another challenge is that many of the actions that call for expansion type activities are on hold overall due to the pandemic and across the board, as some things can move forward, other things may not due to the pandemic and where we're at now. Some resources that are needed specifically for this plan, like I said, is subject matter expertise, especially about their priority population, and financial resources and large political buy-in, especially for expansion type activities. For the Access to More Resources plan, some achievements that was made is that with our system mapping subcommittee restarted, there's also been more focus on improving places for virtual resources, especially during the pandemic. There's been made great strides in that. Some anticipated challenges is with the pandemic also is the creation of physical hubs to have access to these resources can be difficult at this time. And also the feasibility of some of these actions were maybe not as easy as they first thought. That the resources that they really need are financial resources for some of these challenges and political buy-in. For the Early Childhood Health and Wellness Plan, some achievements that were made was the completion of the IECBH plan and the Hawaii Child Abuse Neglect Plan, and moving forward with those plans. They're also supporting the creation of action plans for the health and wellness guidelines. Some unanticipated challenges is that overall, due to the health sector just focusing on the pandemic, there has been pauses made on an objective. However, and this plan is very large, and so facilitation is needed to communicate across the various champions, or at least more facilitation is needed compared to the other plans. The resources that are needed are financial resources to implement some of these actions and support the plans that were created and align with these actions. For our Quality Workforce and Development and Supports Plan, some of the achievements was that I do want to say that even though this plan has the least amount of champions compared to the other plans, the champions have dedicated a lot of hours, staff time to moving actions forward, especially through Manoa's ECE3 project. And a lot of it, I have a lot of appreciation for the time that has been dedicated through that. An unanticipated challenge is that more partner buy-in is needed, not just political buy-in, but overall more partners are needed for this comprehensive and complex plan. And financial resources are really needed to implement more actions. I think Terry's presentation before this sheds a lot of light on what I mean by this. Some resources that are needed is facilitation to support more effective and collaborative planning, especially for possible strategic planning changes. Champions do feel like there could be additions to this plan and allow for more of a robust workforce support SIP. For lastly, this is the last plan I want to go over, is the transition supports plan. For achievements for this plan, they have completed the transition toolkit and posted it. Supportive partnerships have been really established for this plan for each of the objectives. And they also have worked to present work to the creators of the SIP and kind of share back what they have done over the last year. And an unanticipated challenge is that a main action for this plan is, especially the very first one, requires more additional resources than first thought, especially including personnel and financial resources for sure. Kind of going into my last point of financial resources and technical assistance will be needed for that action, especially around survey development, dissemination, as well as data collection and analysis. So for this last part, I just want to share, as we're looking ahead to this next year, some next steps and maybe how ELB, some food for thought of how ELB can help and support our overall initiative and the state plan. Overall, we're going to be looking ahead to, I want to ensure that we keep looking at everything viewed through the state plan like we have been doing and continue to do so, and keep that in our purview. We've done a great job so far, and I think that's something that we can easily continue to do. I want to complete re-engagement for the last of the plans and take them through that process so those champions can re-engage with each other and get reacquainted with the plan for true implementation. I want to also reevaluate and resurvey champion support and what is needed for this next year, as some information may have changed over time. And I want to also connect and align champions more with, as we're looking to moving forward with Act 46, and maybe Build Back Better if it passes, and other federal initiatives. I also want to finalize the SIP logic models, and our EOEL is looking to launching the state plan data dashboard with a summary of building block vital signs very soon. Some of the next steps that champions are going to be looking towards is connecting with more subject matter experts, seeking sustainable financial resources, moving forward with actions that have that momentum, and facilitating more convenings with maybe new partners and champions to see how we can get more folks on board. And some food for thought of how ELB can support. These are not really direct actions I'm asking at this moment of ELB. I see them more as things to keep in the back of the mind, and as you continue to do your work on the board, if these things can be kept in the thoughts and planning, especially with alignment and participation. I think ELB can continue to encourage the importance of aligning, no matter how large or small the initiatives are, with the early childhood state plan, and encourage participation of our many stakeholders and those in our sector to continue to find ways to connect themselves with the state plan and the SIPs. Another key thing is that's really needed is seeking resources and funding, and supporting those needs and those folks that are doing it. So whether it's coming from private or public funding for the state plan, overall funding is needed for its implementation and certain projects that fall under the strategic implementation plans as implementation happens. Another thing that's important for ELB to keep in mind is reflection and renewal. As we think about renewing our state plan in the next 2 years, and the importance of reflecting what we have gone through in order to inform our new planning process, or what we can go through for the next 5 to 10 years. So that's it that I have. I hope I didn't go over time. My clock got lost, but thank you. This is a good time for questions.
We have one question in the chat. Carrie asked, I think there's a lot of work being done out there that is contributing to the implementation of the state plan. I wonder if we can figure out an efficient strategy, sharing strategy to make Alohi's job a bit easier.
Maybe it's a rhetorical question.
No problem. I think there is, I agree with you, Carrie. I think there is a lot of work out there that I only have a few inklings about or heard about in passing, or may not even know about, that is really connected to our state plan and moving those things forward. And so having help, I think I rely on you and everyone in our office to keep kind of their ears on the ground, and as we work in our different parts of our sector, in helping to connect that. But as far as a more efficient sharing strategy, I think we can keep coming up with creative ideas, because there's so much information.
Alohi, is that something that the Capacity and Resources Subcommittee can help you with?
Maybe. They have been probing me to see how they can support me, and that might be a more practical way that the subcommittee could support this work.
I'm thinking that if we don't have somebody tasked to do it, it's going to float out there for all of us to just think about somebody else doing it. So it might be something that I would urge the Capacity and Resources Committee to put on the list of things to talk about anyway, to see how you might be supportive of addressing that need. Sherilyn, does that, and Erin, does that seem reasonable for the committee?
Yeah, it's noted. So we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Alohi.
Yes, thank you, Sherilyn. Thank you, Erin.
Alohi, I have another question. In the sections where you talked about the unanticipated challenges and the resources needed, they were fairly global, because you were looking at patterns across the sectors of the SIP plans. I'm wondering if, as you bump into those that are more specific, if you might bring them back to the board at times, or bring it to the Capacity and Resources Committee to see where we might be able to be supportive of those specific resource needs or specific challenges. It's really wonderful to have had this report and see what progress is being made despite the disruption of the pandemic, and the focus on the state plan and the SIP. And as you tie down more what those needs are, to figure out ways that the board can be supportive would be something to consider.
Yes, Bob, I think I agree with your sentiment of being able to kind of understand the details, because yes, you're right, that my presentation was a lot more global and looking at the patterns across the different plans. And there may be more details that board members are may want to get into the weeds of it. And I think there is open communication as those details come more to light, and what those certain projects that are needed to be funded can be brought to the capacity resource team as a more specific place, rather than just broadly the whole ELB, and so that it can be talked about. Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions for Alohi or for the committee?
I have one, Bob.
Okay, Melody.
I just think it's possible that if there is island coordination or state coordination, that it will be easier to obtain the information. I don't think anybody knows the communities better than the communities themselves. So I'm not sure how, Alohi, you were gathering all the information, but that's a lot of information to gather. And to be even more detailed than that, I don't know. But I'm thinking the communities would be really helpful with communities within the islands and, you know, state coordination as well. So, but thank you. That was a lot of work.
And then next we have Justina, who asked, Alohi, how were the complete percentage in progress determined by objectives in the SIP? And then Justina, in case I didn't capture that correctly.
No, that's good. And hopefully Alohi knows what I mean. But basically my question is like, where did the denominator come from? Were you trying to look at like which line by line objectives were completed in the SIP versus ones that were either reprioritized or said that to still be active? I was trying to understand the pie charts that you had up on the page.
That is, the denominator is by actions. And so that's a larger denominator than our objectives would be. And so is the, yeah, each of those colors are by actions. And just for the sake, I like the sentiment melody of by island. I think just as my wish list, I wish I had a little bit more grounds or ears on the grounds on the neighbor islands, of course.
And then one comment from Carrie, we sent our end of the year report to Alohi so the network team's work could be documented. Most teams are implementing pieces of the state plan, but we didn't have the report until December 31st. Maybe partners could send reports to Alohi and then EOEL staff can sift through the information. Not sure.
I think that's something possible that I can help with, Carrie.
So I think we're going to move on, but before we do that, I want to thank the committee for following through on its charter and not only coming up with how reporting is going to happen, but supporting Alohi to make that reporting happen. It's really helpful to see the progress that's being made and to know that there is work yet to be done. And Alohi, we really appreciate your efforts and bringing it forth so that we can see where things stand at the moment. So thank you to both. Much appreciated. Right, the next item on the agenda is the leadership update, and we have some information items and then a couple of action items that we need to take and move this along pretty quickly. Just an update on the institutional analyst 2 position. You recall you approved at the November meeting the position description and the chairs connecting with the Department of Education OTM office to post the position. And that was done on December 15th. The close date for submission of interest and application was January 3rd. I am waiting to hear back from OTM and have reached out to them to determine if there's anything else that needs to be done so they can send me any qualified applicants so that we can continue to move forward and engage the panel for the interview process to continue to get back to all of you with a recommended candidate for the position. That's where that stands at the moment, and I will certainly keep everyone posted as things progress. I also wanted to relate a little bit about what was shared at the December 6th legislative panel from HECIA, which, by the way, we did align with the state plans, Alohi, and how the building blocks were supported with the SIP. And basically, I shared with the legislative panel the coordinator's position description and our plans for moving forward. A bit about the Hawaii Early Childhood Education Stipend Program status, with an emphasis on this really significant importance of workforce capacity building, not only to meet the demands of Act 46, but that this is a current issue to attract and retain providers and teachers in our communities, early learning care providers of some sort, and that not only do we have to sustain what we currently have, but we have a gap already. And so that gap plus what lies ahead for workforce capacity building makes whatever the legislature does on workforce capacity particularly important. And shared a little bit about the Equity Workforce Subcommittee supporting the UH plan that Terry shared with us today. She had already shared with the legislators the nature of the grant and the efforts of the current study. So that was basically the information that I shared on behalf of the Early Learning Board at the request of HECA related to Act 46 and our plans moving forward. And we have 2 action items. I'm going to go to the second first and then come back. The second one was to approve the representative for the Board of Education Advisory Board for the Superintendent of Schools search. I asked for volunteers and or names of possible people. Sherilyn very graciously came forward and offered to volunteer to serve on the advisory committee, noting that not only is she connected to the Early Learning Board, but supports parent connections through her leadership of the family Hui, has been a parent of a child in the board in the Department of Education, served on the DOE parent school communities, and has had other community nonprofit representation roles as well as small business roles. So she reaches out to a number of constituent potential groups, which was, you may recall, one of the requests in seeking an applicant. So Sherilyn, thank you very much for stepping forward to offer to volunteer to serve on this advisory group. So I'm going to make a motion to approve Sherilyn Shiinoki, as our early education representative on the Board of Education Advisory Board for their Superintendent of Schools search. Is there a second?
I second Boyle.
Thank you, Ronnie. Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Sherilyn.
Thank you hugely, Sherilyn, for coming forward. All right, hearing no discussion, let's take a vote on the board's approval for the Board of Education Advisory Board representative to be Sherilyn Shiinoki. Leilani?
Aye.
Justina?
Aye.
Erin?
Aye.
Okay, Iolani?
Aye.
Thank you. Ben?
Aye.
I vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Sherilyn?
I think I would vote for that, right?
You sure you can?
Oh, okay, sure.
Good. Mari?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Melody?
Yes.
Oh, by acclamation, Sherilyn, you have been selected to be your early education representative. Thank you so much. Having gone through the experience in the last search, you'll not only learn a lot, but I know that you will contribute a great deal to ensure that the early education voice is heard. And we really appreciate your willingness to do that. Thank you so much. Okay, the last item to approve of are the priorities for 2021. We have discussed these already. I sent off to all of you the priorities for approval with highlighted changes that were suggested, some of them at the last meeting, and one addition from Terry Locke, through public testimony, under the efforts to expand workforce capacity building. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the priorities draft as presented.
I move to approve the priorities for 2021, 2022. Is that the right numbers? Are we keeping it as
Yeah,
those
because
years?
it's the year within which the fiscal year is July 1, 21 to June 30th, 22. That's why the date is there. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will take a vote of the members. Leilani,
Aye.
Justina,
Aye.
Erin,
Aye.
okay, Leilani,
Aye.
Ben,
Aye.
Peter's aye. Why, Ali,
Aye.
Sherilyn,
Aye.
Mari,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Melody.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the priorities have been approved, which will help to guide our efforts, excuse me, as we move forward to support the legislature as well as to focus our work throughout the rest of the year, subcommittees and board conversations. I have nothing else to report unless anybody has any questions of me that they wish to ask. And hearing none, let's move to invite public comment. Okay, Upu, I see nothing in the chat. Is that correct? All right, if there's no public comment, then we will have member updates as the next item.
I have an update.
Okay.
Our family who is sponsoring a family wellness drive-by on Saturday, February 5th from 9 to 11 at Kroc Center in Eva Beach. Will be providing books and activities for young keiki, as well as masks and other wellness items, including fresh fruit from Chef Hui, menstrual kits from the Ma'i movement, and dental kits from Hawaii Dental HDS Foundation. If you have any other items that you would like to include in our free giveaways to families out there that fit in with the health and wellness theme, then please give me a call. And then I'll be sending out a flyer to everybody, and please let everybody know about it, because first 100 people can come and get some stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherilyn. Erin?
Hello, everyone. I apologize. I wanted to provide this update at our December meeting, but we had some time off last month. I did want to let the board know that I am going to be resigning from my position here at Kekeoka'aina at the end of this month officially, and I am going to be on board full-time at Association for Infant Mental Health and come that time. So just wanted to inform everyone here. And I will send an email with my updated email address.
Erin, I think the question people have is, will you remain on the board?
I would love to if you'll have me.
We will.
So that would be my definite honor to be able to stay on board.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, Carrie, you had something?
Yeah, for HEICC, I just wanted to share that Early Intervention Services had their stakeholder meeting at the end of last year. It was excellent, really well done, really great data. And so Alohi, the feedback and the culmination of the data and the progress and the work that they're doing in the early intervention space might be really helpful for the state plan. And then action strategy update March 8th, please save the date for the all network meeting from 9 to 12:30. It will be virtual as a result of Omicron. But we will have Christy, the focus is on early literacy and family engagement. And we will have Christy Yamaguchi and Ellen Galinsky and Ralph Smith back with us, which is great. And then we'll have a really nice panel. It won't be a panel format so much as it's going to be a conversation with a lot of our early literacy and family engagement partners across the islands. So please save the date, March 8th, 9 to 12:30.
Thank you, Carrie.
And then next,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead, Bob.
No, go ahead, Carrie. Okay.
I was gonna say next we have Ale had a question for Dana Luca, if she can do an update on updated DHS guidance related to COVID for preschools and childcare.
Just setting the context, just because K-12 was recently adjusted to the new CDC guidance, but we haven't heard anything about childcare. So I think it's just causing a bit of confusion among at least our families. Like, is it 5 days or is it 10 days and all of that. And so just curious if there's any kind of timing that would realign the DHS guidelines or not. I just trying to project ahead as we try to figure out how to keep our preschools open, even during this time of the Omicron, going up in cases. So.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So the immediate clarification that we're going to make to our guidelines is that staff and children who have tested positive for COVID-19 or who have experienced COVID-19 symptoms shall not return to the childcare facility for 10 days. So it's in line with our current guidelines. We're going to clarify that day 0 is the day of a positive test, COVID-19 test, or the onset of symptoms. And then when the staff and child return to the childcare facility, they shall be 24 hours with no fever, without the use of fever reducing medications, and that other symptoms of COVID-19 are improving. So we plan to make this clarification in our guidelines and on our DHS website and get that information out to providers. And then further clarification maybe coming after that, as we still need to have further discussions with the Department of Health.
Ina, appreciate that. Do you have the timing of when you at least make sort of the clarification posted on your website?
I don't, but I know that we need to do it soon because we are getting those questions from providers. So I'll be working with our public information officer, Amanda Stevens, to post something on our website.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
And then Dana, before you go away, and before I get to you, Melody, Lenny had a follow-up. Lenny, go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, Dana, it should be very quick. I saw in the ELB newsletter that some of the ARPA funds had been distributed in 2021, and I had 2 calls from centers today saying they haven't gotten responses. So I was wondering if those funds in fall of 2021 maybe went to family daycare providers and the center-based funds will be coming soon.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Lonnie. That is correct, that the ARPA funds that went out in 2021 were issued to family childcare providers. We are holding on to the center-based applications as we work through that staff retention bonus those technical issues around that staff retention bonus. So we decided to open up that staff retention bonus to all of your childcare facility employees and not just caregivers. But our current electronic application doesn't make revisions to that allowance. So we're working on that technical aspect, and we will be sending an email out to those eligible providers to inform you on what to do, how to go into the application and make those revisions to your application for the staff that you want to include with that staff retention bonus. So we're really close to finalizing the electronic application, and you should receive an email informing you on the steps to take to go back in if you already submitted your application.
Thank you, Dana. That actually totally makes sense. I just want to let you know there might be some messaging issues because when you try to follow up, there's not necessarily a consistent message. And I know at least one provider was told to ask her caseworker who said, I don't know, and sent him back to the technical assistant. So if they ask me, I say, absolutely, I know they're working on it. It's a highest priority, but I just wanted you to know that if you could even separate out those two issues, or if you could just maybe be a little bit proactive with the messaging. People are getting a little bit frazzled, especially as the kids are now getting sick in the childcare centers.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lonnie.
And then next I have Melody. Go ahead, Melody.
Okay, recently Keikioka Aina received additional funding to service an additional approximately 500 families, the HIPPY Parent Education Program. And we were, thank you to Colleen, who connected us with the pre-K programs, the EOEL pre-K programs, and we've been getting a lot of families registered or enrolled through those programs. But we just want to put it out to everybody out there, any program, early childhood program with families servicing children 3 and 4 years old. 3 cohorts will be implemented, one in March, one in May, and one in October. The first cohort started already this week. So we do have 3 more cohorts starting, and we don't want anybody to miss out. It is a brand new HIPPY program, which will also include STEM, a STEM curriculum. It's a virtual. All supplies are actually, if it's families on Oahu, it's also, we're providing it statewide. So families on Oahu will be able to pick up their curriculum supplies, while families on the neighbor islands will be, their supplies will be mailed to them. So it's a once in a lifetime opportunity here. So I want to make it, let everyone know as much as possible to get on board. So if you are interested, the best thing right now is just to send me a message, and I can send you directly to the program's manager.
Okay, I see no one else in the chat, so I'm assuming that member updates are completed. Thank you all. Let me quickly go over the meeting outcomes as I have them, and then Carrie, if you would share with us some good words to leave on. These are the things I have on my list of outcomes. One is to ensure that we keep Act 46 and 210 as a priority of looking for opportunities for legislative action. Second one is that there are 3 draft workforce bills moving along at this point, which we need to keep on our radar screen to determine how we will support them in testimony or not support them as they are finalized. We had our first state plan progress report update today, thanks to the Capacity and Resources Subcommittee and Alohi's efforts. And suggestions were made for how early learning board members can continue to support the Capacity and Resources SIP planning. We approved Sherilyn Shinoki to serve as the Board of Education Advisory Group Early Educator Representative in the Superintendent Search. And we also approved priorities for 2021, 23, 22 for the board. Those are my outcomes for this particular meeting. Lots of information shared today, a lot to digest, and we will probably need to come back around some conversations to continue around some of those items. And Carrie, your thoughts as we leave today.
Sure. On the heels of you saying with all the information shared today, this quote is from Edith Lovejoy Pierce. "We will open the book. Its pages are blank. We are going to put words on them ourselves. The book is called Opportunity, and its first chapter is New Year's Day." So happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you, Carrie. How appropriate. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the work that went into preparing for this meeting and doing the breadth of sharing that went on. Stay healthy, everyone, and we will see you in February. Aloha.
Oh.
Hey, Keopu, it all worked. Good job.